wa rahmatullah. Welcome back to a new session of Friday Talk. The topic today is Islam and modernity. Now, why this topic? There are many hadith narration that discuss about the diminishing of religious faith and practice over time, and the significance of maintaining one's faith and practice as time unfolds. These themes are recurrent in various hadith collections, and where the Prophet actually predicts what is going to happen in the future, especially the trials and tribulation that you will fall on his ummah, such that any act of devotion or adherence to the religion will be very significant, more valuable as time progresses. So it means that we are facing more challenges, and for us to be able to keep up our faith and our practice, it's much more valuable today. These are just some of the example of hadith. For example, the top one, it says the best people are those living in my generation, and then those will follow them, and then those who will follow the later, meaning the best people, rather than the best people. I think the best time will be the time during the Prophet, and then later the Sahabas, and then Tabi'in and Tabi'in. So as we move away, it's becoming more challenging. We will see more challenging. The other hadith also has more or less a similar kind of connotation. There shall come upon the people a time in which the one who is patient upon his religion will be the one like holding a burning rock or something, ember, like a rock. There's another hadith that I couldn't find the text, but I think it is in Tirmidhi. I remember the narrator is Nu'aym bin Hamid, Nu'aym bin Hamid, and it says the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was quoted as saying, during his time, if your taklif, if your religion is 10% less than what has been prescribed to you, it may end you up in a catastrophe, in a hellfire. But it will come a time when you can do 10% of your taklif. It may end you up in a paradise, or to be successful. So it shows that this issue of time, as we as we have moved away from the period when the Prophet was given the wahy, it matters, and it matters to us to understand the reality of this of this time. So the agenda is to understand the reality of our time, and because we are living in this modernity. And I have divided this talk into these four sections, or 4 points, talking about modernity itself, and then I'll talk about Islamic modernism, which is like a reaction to the modernity. We'll talk about characteristics of modernity, and what should be the Muslim response. And the whole idea is to understand our reality in order, for us to strengthen our faith and practice. So what is modernity? First of all, in most of the discussion about modernity, you hear about these terms, and these terms, they are glorified, and they have a very positive connotation, like a new or latest or trendy, fashion. All these terminologies that are connected to modern connected to future, innovation, technological. These have a very positive connotation. Almost they're seen as being the truth. Opposite or in contrast to terms like old or outdated, out of style or antiquated, yeah? These conventional, traditional, these these terminologies are seen to have kind of negative implication. So people, they prefer new than the old. They prefer, latest than the tradition. And it's not just referring to products and services, but also when it comes to cultural artifacts, identities, and things like that. So modernity, we can say it champions this idea that the new is essentially superior, while downgrading whatever that is traditional, that is seen as an inferior and outdated. And this, our argument here is that this dichotomy oversimplifies the complexity, of progress and innovation as people are looking forward for future, for improvement. Yeah, it's kind of overlooking the value that the traditional method, the traditional ideas and practices offer. So we should not just accept, that's what is new is good, or what is latest is good, and or what is traditional, is kind of bad. We need to be much more nuanced on this. So what is modernity? So modernity as a concept, it means to live with your time. And a Muslim is not expected to live like the life of a 7th century Muslim or 8th century Muslim or middle age. No, Muslim is expected, to live with his or her time. But the way to live with your time is to continuously updating yourself, meaning you are adapting to the evolving societal, technological, economic, political, cultural landscape. So all these things are changing, and therefore you're not supposed to be left behind. You are supposed to move on with these changes, So continuous updating requires the use of your worldview, because some of these changes may not be compatible with your faith and your culture and your identity. Therefore, there's no harm for you to keep up with time, but you have to realize that you need to use your worldview, meaning the philosophy of your religion, your culture, and your identity to address the contemporary life's emerging questions, because this modernity will always come, with new questions, emerging questions. So people are continuously updating, as they navigate different complexities of modern life in order to stay relevant and to respond to these new challenges and opportunities. But always we should leverage the philosophy of our religion, our culture, and our identities. Okay, so this is a basic concept of what is modernity. Now, in theory, then, there are supposed to be different ways to translate modernity to suit, different people's, you can say, worldviews or, their culture, their identity, because each group of people, they will, respond to modernity, or they will modify modernity according what suits them. All right. In other words, there are supposed to be different versions or multiple versions of modernity that actually cater and suit the needs of people coming from different religious and cultural background. But in practice, this is not true because a dominant form of modernity, Western modernity, has been globalized and has overshadowed these diverse religious and cultural narratives, and shaping global standards and practices across all societies. So we can say that, the Western modernity is what has dominated, the landscape, all right? And why this? There is a historical reason. So Western modernity, it rose from the 16th century Europe, and it came about in opposition to religion. And this is very important because the Western modernity, it is opposing, it is in conflict with religion. And so Western modernity represents, you can say, a departure from traditional religious foundations and religious societies, because Europeans, they were very much Christian, they were very much religious in the Middle Ages. So in the modern time, they have moved away, they have drifted, So this shift that has taken place, that came with modernity, they shifted towards a secularism. And the secularism here, in a nutshell, we need to understand it as a freedom from religion. And for Europeans, it marked in Europe the separation of church and state. Before that, the church used to rule. It used to have a lot of influence in the business of the state, in the public affairs. The modernity that arose in the 16th century, this is the time when they had when they started the Reformation movement. It started there. I'm not saying it came fully matured, but that's how it started. So the Western modernity has achieved global dominance because it's driven by this Western hegemony or haimana, especially in these key areas, and our societies depend on them, and we feel helpless sometimes because they are leading in the area of science and technology. They are leading in economics and banking. They are leading in military and politics, and they're leading in media and cultural exports, as well as they control all these international bodies. There is a misrepresentation in the international body about, non-Europeans, all right? Whether Muslim or non-Muslim, yeah. So that's the situation, all right? So even though modernity, it would have given us, sort of space to kind of practice and experience Islamic modernity or Islamic modernism, but the fact that the West has hegemony over us, so we don't have that ability sometimes, to develop our own modernity. Now, what does it mean to be modernized? Yeah, the West, they present, these ideas of modernity that originated with them as the peak of human progress, and they assume to be objective and universal, and therefore they deserve to be propagated or even forced to all other societies worldwide. And all our societies, post-colonialism, they have put programs to modernize themselves, yeah? So many developing countries have accepted this claim of universality of Western modernity, and therefore they are pursuing modernization, including Oman, all other societies, hoping they will advance their societies at least in science, technology, and industrialization, as in Western countries. And this is where sometimes the mistake is, people, they take modernity to be, has same meaning or same connotation as to be westernized. And sometimes people, they leave their cultures, they leave their identity, and they opt to be westernized uh, in order to, to think themselves as being modern, or to think that they are modernized. Now, and the Europeans, when they went to colonize other countries, their mission, and by the way, this colonization has not ended, because now we are in neo-colonization. We're still being colonized. Mentally, we have been colonized. So when they went to colonize other countries, their mission was glorified as to civilize those non-European savages, as in what they refer as white man's burden to civilize the savage. And therefore, here also, there is a sort of distortion about what is modernity, because modernity, it takes the same meaning as to be civilized. Okay, so that's really cover in very brief the the meaning of modernity in a nutshell. Now, as a reaction to the Western hegemony on Muslim societies, this idea of Islamic modernism emerged in the 19th century with people like Jamaluddin al-Afghani, Muhammad Abdu, Sayyid Ahmed Khan, and there are many others as well, who put forward ideas and theories. And the point, what they were trying to do is to address the intellectual and cultural challenges that is facing Muslim ummah, which is posed by modernity. So Islamic modernism is positioned as a sort of reform movement, aiming to adapt Islamic principles and values to the needs and challenges of modern life, by embracing aspects of Western modernity, such as science and technology, while maintaining Islamic teachings, culture, and identity. So they thought, it will be possible to be selective, meaning, to take things that would be useful for us and to leave those that are not. All right, so we can take the technology and science, There are societies that have attempted to do something similar, and Japan is a good example. Japan has adopted the Western modernity in terms of science and technology, but Japanese society has remained very much, in terms of culture and identity as Japanese. So Western modernity, in comparison to Islamic modernism, Western modernity has become sort of a globally dominant, as many countries adopt these modern practices. And, there is always an attempt to make them uniform worldwide. On the other hand, Islamic modernism highlights how different Muslim communities are creatively modifying these modern practices, and they adjust and interpret these modernities in ways that respect and preserve, their traditional values and beliefs. It's not always easy, but this is, So I want to look at 6 key areas and make sort of comparison, all right? So we look into economic systems, we look into legal systems, educational philosophy, social policies, cultural identity, and tradition and innovation. So in a very brief, just, I'll spend one slide on each to kind of highlight, because this is how we can understand better the Western modernity, and we can understand better the idea of Islamic modernism. So when it comes to economic system, the Western modernity, economic system is defined by principle of capitalism, free market, and they utilize the conventional banking and financial system, which is based on riba, and they prioritize accumulation of wealth, and people's wants, which are unlimited, to pursue happiness, to pursue hedonistic, lifestyles. As opposed to Islamic modernism, the economic system is defined by principles of Islamic economics, banking and finance, which prohibits interests or riba. It prohibits speculation or harar. It prohibits gambling, maisir. All the products and services have to be halal. So it prohibits non-halal activities, economic activities, and it emphasizes on risk sharing and ethical investment in all economic activities. Now there is we cannot claim today Muslim countries, they represent examples of Islamic economic system. They are not namadij. But many Muslim countries in the last few decades, they have started to move towards Islamic economic system or aspect in parallel to what they have adopted from the what they've been inherited from the colonial West. So things sometimes move hand in hand, but Islamic economic system is gaining momentum, Islamic banking, finance gaining momentum. When it comes to legal systems, Western modernity is, has promoted these purely man-made secular laws. They will not accept anything that fell from the sky, as they say. And therefore, they remove religious influences in state governance and in public affairs. And this is exemplified by, US and most of European countries, their legal systems. As opposed to Islamic modernism, it seeks to integrate Sharia law or sacred law with modern legal frameworks that both modernize and remain faithful and adhering to Islamic principles, teachings, and values. When it comes to educational philosophy, the West primarily focuses on secular education and often prioritize scientific and technological fields and advancement, aiming to kind of adopt innovation and practical skills that are relevant, to the modern economy and they serve, the worldly needs. All right. Economic decisions, the educational system is not serving economic decisions that will think beyond this world. As opposed to Islamic modernism, it seeks kind of to blend the secular education with religious curriculums, creating a holistic educational experience with the aim to produce graduates who are not only scientifically and technologically proficient, but also deeply rooted in Islamic values and ethics. When it comes to social policies, the Western modernity advocates for liberal social policies that emphasize individualism and individual rights and freedoms, including gender equality, right and freedom on sexual behavior, sexual orientation, LGBTQ and things like that. As opposed to Islamic modernism, it develops social policy that align with Islamic teachings and values, while also addressing modern social issues. And just to give you, one example, many Muslim countries have enacted progressive women's rights reforms that allow women to pursue education and career at the same time, but still remaining, truthful to their religion and practice, faith and practice. Okay, when it comes to cultural identity, Western modernity promotes this globalized culture that actually undermines and reduces local tradition and cultural identities, through widespread dissemination of Western cultural products, such as music, films, fashion, consumer products, and many, many more, ideas. But Islamic modernism is strive actually to preserve and to revitalize Islamic traditional and cultural practices. And through modern media, Islamic modernism propagates this mixed narrative that combines culture and tradition, but especially offsetting with the morals and ethics that came from Islamic teachings and Islamic values. When it comes to tradition, Western modernity, there is a strong emphasis on innovation and kind of disconnecting or breaking away from tradition. They promote embracing new ideas and technologies, and these de-emphasize or degrade actually historical continuity and preservation of traditional cultural practices and artifacts. But in Islamic modernism, there is embrace of modern ways and innovation, but at the same time, values preservation of traditional and cultural practices and identities. It means that it kind of emphasizing continuity with the past. And Oman is among the countries that, really attempt to do this, to keep, to moving forward into modernity, but at the same time, to keep the tradition and the history, to preserve the tradition and the history. So these are just examples that highlight how Islamic modernism not only adapts to modernity, but actually shapes it. All right. So it's not only we take the Western modernity and we just need to adapt, but we need to actively recreate Islamic modernism. We need to shape it too. So that is Islamic modernism adapts and shapes at the same time Western modernity to fit Islamic values, and want to be able to offer a clear alternative to the secular, liberal, and capitalist ways of thinking and life. So this approach combines embrace of modern societal needs, but at the same time, adherence or propagates adherence to religious values at the same time. And it illustrates the broader negotiation taking place globally, not only for Muslim, but also different other cultures. They kind of interpret modernity in their own terms and context. And it doesn't come freely. I mean, it comes with a lot of effort. Yeah. Okay, so that's about Islamic modernism. So let's look at the characteristics of Western modernity. Western modernity is mainly described or characterized by the following, 5 items. There may be more, but I'm just selecting these major ones. Because if you understand this, then you'll understand the Western modernity, and you'll understand its impact, and you will also be able to think how you can sort of counteract. Okay, so secularism, Western modernity is secular. It's not religious. It is free from religion. It could be anti-religion sometimes. Because modernity it tends to destroy whatever that is sacred, and we can see, the family values, are being destroyed. Even the identity of a people is being destroyed. Institutions, traditional institutions like marriage, they have been destroyed, or they have been reshaped. All right, what used to be understood marriage traditionally for thousands of years as being a union between a man and a woman, now it has taken totally a different look. What is a family? What used to be a father and a mother, now, is totally different. You could have two men, and adopt children, two women. You could have a group of people, within the family to claim to be a family. So also Western modernity, it kind of promotes this individualism, and this is an issue that we need to look at it a bit more. When we say individualism, we talk about almost like absolute rights and freedom of individual, over a community. The other one is technological advancement. This idea that society can only progress, and people can only progress through technological advancement, because that's all what matters. We will revisit this one. And then rationalism, this idea of giving the rationalism as a priority over all other things. You can create reality, the truth and reality, only through rationality. And you disregard religion, and you disregard wisdom that have been given, knowledge and wisdom that has been given to us, through religion. And the last one is liberalism. And liberalism, the word liberalism, we can look at it like a freedom, especially for individual rights and freedom of individuals. Okay, so the question is how these characteristics kind of align or contrast with Islamic modernism, because these are the characteristics of modernity. And if we live in this reality of modernity, and if we engage and interact with this modernity, it's important to understand, because this is the philosophical underpinning of modernity, of Western modernity. So how these characteristics kind of align or contrast with Islamic modernism. So when it comes to secularism, generally speaking, we can say secular means non-sacred, or freedom from religion. And secularism as a political concept, it kind of emerged in Europe during the 18th century Enlightenment. And the idea of secularism was positioned as a response to religious conflicts in Europe, and the power that religious institutions like church held over political and public affairs. So you have philosophers like John Locke and Voltaire who argue for a separation between church and state to prevent these religious organizations from interfering in government decisions and public affairs. But the reality today of this separation between church and state, in theory, state is supposed to maintain a neutral position on religious matters, but in reality, state interferes in all religious matters. And we have seen, for example, I mean, it is typical in Europe, but we can emphasize France. Is a good example. The government of France is very oppressive, very Islamophobic, to Muslims, and all their ideas, wanting to maintain the French identity and all of that is kind of difficult to understand, because on one hand they talk about preserving the religious freedom of individual, but at the same time they're curbing the freedom of religion of Muslims to practice their religion. So it's like people speaking from two sides of their mouth. The other thing is the state doesn't take religious morals and values into consideration in its decisions, and therefore this is a problem that we see today. People, they can make decision to conduct genocide. They support the genocide party. They support them with arms, and and they are not thinking about the moral and values on these issues. For them, these decisions can be done without considering religion, as if there is no any moral implication. Yeah. And the other point is religion has been marginalized in public spaces and public institutions, and that's why in Europe they cannot stand women wearing hijab in the public spaces or in the public institutions, like in the government or in public schools and things like that. And not only hijab, but there are many other things as well. Claiming, for maintaining inclusivity and neutrality. And therefore they have restricted, religion, practice to be at home only as a private matter. Okay, so in Islamic modernism may critique this secularism for neglecting the role of religion on the society and potentially marginalizing religious communities. And this is how we see in Europe. Despite Europe, they talk about tolerance, peaceful coexistence, and all these very interesting values. But in reality, we see marginalization of these communities. Rights of these communities have been transgressed. There's a lot of discrimination. There's a lot of marginalization. Also, Islamic modernism will argue for a government model where religion plays a constructive role in public ethics and governance, because the religion comes with a lot of good things, including moral values and ethics. And this can be done without obstructing on individual freedoms. So Islamic modernism proposes a civil state, or Dawla Madaniya, where the state upholds Islamic principles of governance, such as public good, maslaha amma, social justice, adala ijtimaiya, and shura, consultation, whilst maintaining pluralism and participation. And this has been proven throughout history of Muslim governance or Muslim ruling. Now, when it comes to individualism, the concept of individualism is a hallmark of Western modernity, where individuals have personal autonomy to make their own decisions without external interference. So it places the individual kind of at the center of life, whether social, political, economic, and it encourages individual to act independently and to depend on their own skills and resources. So this approach has led to advancement in individual rights and freedom in the West. There's a lot of positive things on this issue, but it also presents challenges when it comes to balancing between individual rights and freedom on one hand and community responsibilities on the other, because it gives a priority to individuals as opposed to community. So community is not important in this schema. An individual enter the community only for individual benefit, not for community, responsibility. So Islamic modernism may critique the extreme focus on individualism, which leads to social fragmentation, selfishness, neglect of family and community obligations. And this is what has led in the West the change of the structure of the family, limiting a family only to father, mother, and immediate siblings, neglecting of the extended family, people not taking care, helping each other, and so individualism is not like it's not in Islam. End of the day, every individual in Islam is mukallaf. So there is individuality, and on the day of judgment, everyone will stand alone, kafard, to be accountable. So there is a kind of individuality, but there is also the rights of community as well, just like there is a fard ain and fard kifaya. So it emphasizes, the Islamic modernism emphasizes the balance between individuals' rights and freedom and community responsibilities. And this is what is rooted in the Islamic principles of Ummah. So individualism in Islamic modernism, it promotes individualism that incorporates individual rights and freedom within the framework of community welfare, and is aligned with Islamic teaching that emphasize also personal accountability, at the same time communal solidarity. So this is the difference, yeah. This is a very important difference. Now, when it comes to technological advancement, this is another hallmark of modernity, of Western modernity, which is characterized by kind of rapid developments in science and technology, that drive changes in all aspects of life, from education to medicine to entertainment. I don't need to overemphasize on this, because you are all experiencing. We are now in the age of AI, and we see a lot of changes taking place. So technological advancement in Western modernity is kind of supported by a materialistic philosophy of progress and positivism, which hold that scientific knowledge and technological advancement are the only means through which societies can progress and improve. Now, this is a point where Islamic modernism will critique, because Islamic modernism focus on the way it critiques, it says the focus on material progress is kind of overshadowing moral and spiritual development, because these are also important. Actually, these are very important, because we're not living only for worldly, purpose, but we have a mission beyond, we need to be successful not only in this world, but we need to be successful in the hereafter. And therefore, the material is okay, but the moral and the spiritual development takes precedence. So emphasize kind of, Islamic modernism kind of emphasize on the balance between technological progress and ethical considerations, ensuring that technological advancements serve the holistic well-being of society, including spiritual health. And therefore, it advocates for the integration of technology with Islamic ethical values, promoting technology that enhance societal welfare without compromising moral and spiritual integrity. Now, when it comes to rationalism in the context of Western modernity, it emphasizes the autonomy and supremacy of reason, the capability of the mind to think independently of the physical or metaphysical world. So, the metaphysical world is non-existence as far as they're concerned. And it suggests that truth and reality can be understood and can be constructed through reason alone. And therefore, it sidelined any religious explanation or guidance, the guidance that came, let's say, from the Quran and from the Sunnah. For them, this is very unscientific and irrelevant. So rationalism, it prevailed during the 18th century European Enlightenment. And here, the Europeans, they kind of changed their worldview because before 16th century, they had a Christian worldview, which will be very much in line to some extent with the Islamic worldview. But then now the worldview has changed, and therefore they saw the rise of dependence on empirical science and the decline of religious explanation in all fields of life. So Islamic modernism may critique the partition of reason and divine revelation. It argues that reason and revelation are not mutually exclusive, but rather complementary sources of truth and knowledge. And therefore, rationalism, exclusion of metaphysical dimension, alam al-ghaib, leads to a reductionist view of reality. They don't have full reality. They have only partial reality, because the reality of our living is not only this worldly life. The worldly life is only a portion of our existence. They cannot explain our existence, where we come from and where we are going from here. So Islamic modernism promotes an approach to rationalism that respect divine guidance and divine explanation, is kind of integrating empirical rational inquiry, because Islam is not opposing science, is not opposing philosophy, all right? But at the same time, by accepting divine guidance and divine explanation, so you're bringing the moral and ethical value, Islamic moral and ethical value. And the last one is liberalism. And liberalism is grounded in the ideas of individual rights, freedom, and equality. And it advocates for protecting individual rights and freedoms, and often prioritizing them over those of community, because liberalism is also connected to individualism. So liberalism was developed also during the 18th century Enlightenment in Europe as a response to authoritarianism and at that time, often we were talking about oppressive rules of monarchies and religious institutions in Europe. So the intention is good. So you have thinkers such as John Locke and Rousseau, who laid down the foundation of this liberalism in Europe. But the critique that would come from Islamic modernism, liberalism undermines community values and societal stability. For example, Western liberal values that promote individual moral freedoms in matters of sexuality, of marriage, of gender, of lifestyle, may conflict with Islamic laws that have provided clear guidance on these issues. All right, so Islamic model of liberalism will advocate for freedom that do not conflict with Islamic values, so that promoting a society that respect individual rights while maintaining community harmony, and of course, maintaining Islamic values. Now, there is an interesting video. I think most of you have seen this video, but I will play it again anyway, because it's kind of emphasizing, all the things that we have talked so far. I hope I will have enough time to, to complete my slide.
I came across a video on TikTok recently, which has really impressed a lot of people, especially Muslims. You've got this guy who's a non-Muslim and telling the world the real reason behind why Qatar is having so much trouble accepting LGBT people. And that's precisely the wording this guy, Dennis Fang, uses on TikTok, as I say. I just wanted to share this video. It's quite short, a couple of minutes long, and it's one of the best videos I've ever come across by a non-Muslim explaining the Islamic perspective on LGBT and gender and why Qatar, as he puts it, is having so much trouble from the West, which accepts a very different set of values based on secular liberalism. And of course, the West is seeking to impose this culturally and economically on the rest of the world. And Qatar, obviously as a Muslim country, is resisting this. And the West doesn't understand why. It doesn't want to hear the reasons why. And Dennis Fang, to his credit, he sounds like an English-educated public school guy, actually. I think he lives in Australia, that gives a superb set of insightful reasons why Muslims do not accept this agenda, and why actually we cannot accept this agenda. It's not a question of stubbornness or not wanting to go along with the Western values. That God has given us certain parameters and guidelines and rules by which to live our lives, and they are non-negotiable. They are set down by our Creator. Anyway, I just want to share this video. I'll share it with you its entirety, and I'll link to the TikTok link below, and you can read the comments left by Muslims, which are very appreciative of a non-Muslim's understanding, which I think is quite rare in my experience, to find a non-Muslim to really get it. Anyway, enjoy.
Why is Qatar struggling so much with LGBT people? Is it simple bigotry? Can't they be more open-minded and be more accepting of all self-identities? Well, it's because of the moral framework of Islam and LGBT that are diametrically opposed. You see, LGBT is a result of Western individual liberalism. It's built fundamentally upon the revolutionary idea that one has sovereignty over their own bodies. You are free to do whatever you want with it. As a result, the idea of goodness is a utilitarian one, where fostering one's own pleasure and limiting the undermining of other people's pleasure is the ultimate virtue. And because morality is subjective, one's own feelings inside are of the utmost importance. Hence, we have people identifying with their own feelings and bodily urges. Hence, I feel like a female, therefore I am a female. I'm attracted to men, therefore I identify as a homosexual. In Islam, on the other hand, one doesn't have sovereignty over their own bodies, for humans were created deliberately by God to fulfill a noble and spiritual purpose. And that purpose is in serving God, who is the ultimate form of good. In this moral framework, in this paradigm, Allah created the male and the female with reproductive and social roles, and thus fulfilling those purposes, it's honoring God. There is no concept of my body, my choice, for the choice has already been made. It was destined for you. It is, for example, only in a heterosexual marriage where gender differences are enforced, where men are more dominant and women have ideals of beauty and gentility, that we see a metaphysical wholeness in marriage. Sex outside those purposes loses all meaning and legitimacy. Well, remember, the purpose of sex isn't individualistic pleasure, but to fulfill a higher and transcendent good. I hope you can see that Qatar can't simply make a few small amendments to their laws and wave a rainbow flag and accept homosexuality and trans people, because their whole teleology of humanity in general is diametrically opposed to what we're familiar with in the Western world. And although individualistic liberalism has become the de facto lingua franca of morality, we do need to understand the difficulty or even the futility of, well, colonizing foreign people with our ideas of morality. We might think that we're right and they're wrong, but remember, they are thinking the exact same thing. Thanks for watching.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. I wasn't aware that my camera was off. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so we have 5 minutes, and I'll try to cover the last bit. So what should be Muslim response to modernity? So modernity can be seen as challenging and destroying everything that is sacred and everything that is religious, as you have already seen. And therefore, modernity can also undermine universal truths and moral and ethical principles that are divinely commanded. You know, a good example is the LGBTQ thing. This includes challenging, the gender roles, marriage, traditional family structures, personal identities when people are talking about transgender, and many cultural and religious norms. And Muslim response to the influence of Western modernity should primarily focus on the following 5 areas, on the religion and spirituality, lifestyle and consumption, education and technology, social and political life, arts and architecture. But many of these things are supposed to be community organized or government driven. I want to focus only on the issue of individual, what an individual can do. So a Muslim must protect his or her religion, spirituality, and intellect against the negative effect of modernity, because these aspects are critical. It's not only they shape one's life, this life here, but also in the hereafter. And therefore, we need to be very, very careful. And recommendation action is, protect your religion by preserving and strengthening your faith and practice, and by maintaining your Islamic moral and ethical values. You need to stay confident in Islamic teaching, despite there's a lot of criticism from the West and their hard promotion of secular and liberal values, but these are not necessarily true. No, they're not necessarily, we can critique those, and we can bring sort of alternative. We should not take them, for granted that they represent truth and what is right. Yeah. We must engage effectively with modernity as Muslims by presenting Islam in appealing ways to non-Muslims, and respond to this unfair criticism against Islam based on correct Islamic teachings. And we must build knowledge and resilience in Islamic traditions, learning the rich history of Islamic civilization, including its advances in science and innovation, its tolerance, its peaceful coexistence with people of other faith. You need to enhance your knowledge of Islamic sciences and stay well informed about your religion. Some of the challenges of modern lifestyle, and consumerism to Islamic principles. Modern lifestyle and consumerism that is promoted by the Western modernity, the social media and entertainment, are very much appealing to the ruling lower self. And sometimes it appears, especially with the young people, it appears uncontrollable because it's a lower self, nafs al-ammara. And it's easier to follow impulses of our lower self than to adhere to our higher moral and ethical standards. And therefore, staying true to Islamic values in the face of modernity influences require discipline and require continuous personal effort or struggle against the lower self. I think I have shared this slide before. For those who are not sure what does it mean, lower self. The Quran speaks about nafs al-ammara, which is the lower self, where your self is riding your reason. And then you have nafs al-lawwama. This is a critical self where your lower self and your reason are on the same level, and here where you have this struggle. And of course, if you are lucky to move into this nafs al-mutma'inna, or content self, meaning your reason is always overruling your lower self. And here it becomes a lot easier to, to control yourself. Modernity is historically shaped by Western context, is characterized by distinct paths and values that often diverge significantly from Islamic traditions. And Islam has a capacity to adapt to aspects of Western modernity by humanizing its secular and liberal elements with the foundational Islamic principles and values. And this approach allows a dynamic interpretation that respects the essence of our faith while engaging with the contemporary realities. But it is important for Muslims to develop their own version of modernity or Islamic modernism that transcends mere adaptation to Western norms. This approach should reflect a proactive engagement that shapes modernity through an Islamic lens, rather than conforming passively to external standards. And Muslims should actively safeguard their religious, spiritual, and intellectual integrity against modernity, against Western modernity, and aspect of modern lifestyle that conflict with the Islamic teaching. Okay, so that's the end of my talk today. And